Russian disinformation since we regained our independence in 1991. But of course, the situation completely changed some 10 years ago with social media invention, if you could say so, because Russian disinformation, although we understand very well, we see those narratives, we can research, we can do fact checks, it's still, like as in fairy tales, this dragon, if you cut one or two heads, three others will grow instead. And I would say that's why it's been a very tough fighting Russian propaganda, although big parts of our societies in the Baltic countries are resilient, they cannot be influenced by some Russian narratives, but still there are parts who are prone to believe Russian disinformation. For example, now during the wartime, of course, Russia intentionally tries to portray Ukraine as corrupted states, as that Europe shouldn't help them, Europe shouldn't provide money, and these are, from one side you can say this is some kind of this soft kind of disinformation, but it's really infecting people's minds, because you can start seeing even in Latvia that during the first year of the war, lots of people were donating money to Ukraine to buy arms, to buy some human resources and so on. But now this help is decreasing. From one side you could say it's some kind of fatigue, but from another side, of course, you can see this propaganda working, that we shouldn't spend money for Ukraine if we need money for ourselves. And another huge narrative Russia is also trying to sow in is this failed state narrative. Although we are part of EU, we are part of NATO, we have had such a huge development during those last 30 years, you can see that sometimes even local media pick up those stories that everything is bad, economy is not as good as in Germany or wherever else, and from one side you cannot always say that this is directly linked to Russia. But still those, you can see those ways they interact, or for example on other issues like immigration and LGBT, when some politicians in Latvia start talking precisely the same quotes about family values and traditional families which should be preserved, and you listen to Mr. Putin, you see it's like one-to-one. It's, of course, EU is having different kinds of initiatives. For example, our center, we are part of this very big EU network called EDMO, who is doing fact-checkings, who is doing researches. And I would say that it differs from the country to country. We saw the example of Slovakia already more than a year ago, where actually this artificial intelligence doctored video helped to influence the result of elections. But then again, it differs from country to country. Also, the ways governments are reacting to some kind of disinformation, or for example, already doing some pre-banking. Like an example, in Latvia, we are now expanding our military bases. Extra NATO troops are being deployed in Latvia. And based on previous experience, we know that these are the stories Russia can exploit easily, and that's why, of course, our government and other military institutions are preparing to show those stories that these are very well-disciplined soldiers who are not doing any kind of crimes or whatever, that those bases which are expanded, if some land is taken from some individuals, they have been paid, compensated. It's, like these agreements with local city councils and so on. So really doing this some kind of pre-banking and excluding possibility for Russia to use it as some kind, bad stories about NATO soldiers. It's just one example which comes to my mind, but of course yes, there are some others.